Scales and modes, they scare everyone away. So instead of getting scared away, let's just make it as easy as possible. Guitar players, most guitar students, 99% probably, don't ever practice scales. But let your weakness be your strength. What do most guitar players and casual players sit around and do? They jam on minor pentatonic scales. Makes no difference if it's that or... But you probably play a lot of minor pentatonic scales if you're a guitar player. I'm not trying to be a punk. Most people don't have what it takes to sit down and really take this structured academic approach. So let that weakness be a strength as well. Go back to your minor pentatonic scale that you're wearing out. Let's take G. Application 1 for Dorian right here. I'll show you how simple it is in just a moment. If you're playing a blues, for example, in G, and the band goes from the G chord, specifically G7, to the C chord, specifically C7, you're not going to be thinking in terms of jazz scales, jazz theory, jazz harmony, any theory at all. You're going to even stay in the same region of the fingerboard, but you're going to go from G minor pentatonic or basic G blues scale kind of licks to G Dorian licks over the C7 chord. And here's the easiest, fastest way there. Take your minor pentatonic box. There's 5 total, but we're only going to mess with the one everybody knows right now, that starts and ends on the root of the chord. If you're in G, it starts on the 3rd fret. Ends up there. If you're in A, if you're in E, it's your low E and high E strings. Everything else is in the book. I really hope that one day it sees the light of day. It didn't go like I had hoped for. It was written 5 years ago. It's ready to go. It's 1,500 pages over 7 volumes. So you take your minor pentatonic box in root position, and you're just going to add 2 notes, and they're going to be centered on each side of the root. So let's stay in G. You're going to find the note G. Well, there's a G right here. Then the next note up in the normal minor pentatonic would be this. So anytime that you're in this box and you want to go over to Dorian, when you ascend from the root into the next note, you're going to insert an additional note, and it's going to be 1 fret underneath the note you're going to. So we were going to this note, go back 1 fret, add that in, and then play them all 3 together. You'll also notice that because you're in root position, down low you've got a root, and then you've got the next note up in the pentatonic, right here. And the nice thing is that the low E and the high E strings, the notes are the same. The only difference is that they're in different octaves. So you must have the same pattern up here. Already you've expanded your note pool, but you've got 1 extra note to add in. If you go from the root back, as in descending, the note that you would normally descend to in the minor pentatonic scale, let's do that. If you played minor pentatonic up and down, and let's just do 1 octave on the bottom 3 strings. When you descended, you went from the root, back down 1, and this is where you're going to add the next note. You're going to go to the note below, and then you're going to go 1 fret underneath that note. So play the minor pentatonic descending. I got to go 1 fret underneath that now. Add that note in. Then continue minor pentatonic. Oh, I could add this in. Back to root. That's a descending G Dorian. You can play it ascending. Then you can carry it up through the next octave. Guess what? The next note in the minor pentatonic is going to be here. Well, that's right underneath the root up top. Remember, you're going to go 1 fret back from that. Add this note in. And then up here you had. So now you've got low to high. G Dorian. Once you're starting to get into that from your minor pentatonic scale, you're going to forget about theory, look for practical applications of them. I can give you all the theory and all the jazz analysis and all that. I don't think people care. Here's the bottom line. If you're sitting on a minor 7th chord for any length of time, if it's a jam in G and you're just sitting on G minor 7, trigger G Dorian. Usually minor 7th chords that go on and on over static jams take the Dorian mode very well. Carlos Santana loves the Dorian mode. It's right there in so many tunes. It's in Europa. And that's in D Dorian, so the shapes on the fingerboard don't look like what I've shown you today, but it's all Dorian. Ori como va?
What Carlos Santana, their whole act is the sound that they get. They don't play a lot of notes. They're not fancy players, so to speak. But when they hit a note, they make you cry. So it's that sound that's coming through that's really important. You gotta think about this.
Impressions by John Coltrane would be a classic example in the realm of modal jazz. Then you've got So What? It was on Kinda Blue with Miles and Coltrane. By the way, I don't think I was ever as affected by a rock star's passing in my entire lifetime as Tom Petty. That's a whole other story, the Tom Petty obsession. Well, already you've got that note, characteristic of the Dorian mode. And guess what? The other note would fit in there quite fine. Want proof? If you just put too many notes in, it wouldn't sound like a wrong note. Of course, that note doesn't belong in the riff, but it's not a jarring bad note. That's because that segment of that chord progression is A Dorian. Those opening chords of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, Pink Floyd, G Dorian. And then you got the licks. So my point is, I'm not asking you to learn melodic minor, altered scales. I'm not talking to you about Lydian dominant. I'm showing you how simple it is to get to something that has widespread applications all throughout popular music. Don't let the idea that discussion of modes belongs in the hallways of academia make you think that that's not worth learning. Dorian, you should definitely know. The rest, I think you should learn them, but if you don't, you're still going to get a lot of mileage out of what you do know. Dorian, well worth it. There are a million more examples that I could have given you, but I wanted to keep this very basic for right now. If you're familiar with any of the other minor pentatonic boxes up and down the fingerboard, locate the root in those boxes and follow this exact same program of study. You go to the note above the root in the standard minor pentatonic and fill in the gap with that 1 fret behind. And then you would go back 1 note from the root, 1 fret back from the descended note. That'll give you the Dorian positions in all of the fingerboard if you know your pentatonics up and down the fingerboard. Have fun with it. Maybe load up some free jam tracks and start experimenting with it, where you might have been playing just standard minor pentatonic licks before. Now you can throw in a couple extra notes, and you'll probably find that in a lot of cases, those extra notes sound pretty good. So keep at it, have fun, and I'll see you again the next time.